Microsoft Teams meetings are really useful, but they're more than just meeting online. We can use them to discuss content before, during, and after the meeting. That could be using the meeting chat. Much like when we send out a meeting invite, that the conversation can start and continue even after the meeting using an email thread. So there's something that has changed recently, though, with Microsoft Teams meeting chat, and it's around membership or how long I can have access to that chat. Has become a little bit confusing. So the purpose of this video today is to take a look at the different scenarios, and we're going to invite a few people to a meeting and see how this performs. We'll start off with Megan, who's going to be the organizer today, and Megan's going to create a private meeting, and we'll just give that a name, Project Orion. And first of all, we'll invite the operations group. We want to invite Deborah, who's part of the operations group, but just putting in the group just to show you that when we invite a group, that everyone in the group is added to the meeting and they can have access to the meeting. We'll also invite Nesta, and Nesta's going to be a character that he's not going to join the meeting at all. In fact, he's not even going to respond to the RSVP. So he will we're just testing to see if he can access the meeting content. We'll just leave it as a standalone meeting. It's not recurring, although I will talk about some of the differences in how this performs when you're using a recurring meeting. How long can people access chat? And we'll just put in some placeholder text and send that off. Now, first of all, we'll look at the meeting from Megan's point of view. We'll go into Megan's calendar. We can see Project Orion, and we'll use chat with participants so that we can see what a meeting looks like. And I want you to note something here in the meeting. This text, you probably glanced over it beforehand and it probably didn't mean a lot to you, but this is going to be important to recognize who is part of the meeting chat and when they entered. If we expand this top group, it shows all the members of the operations group that was invited to the meeting. And we can also see Nesta, who's been added to that too. So you'll see this text add and change as different people from their different perspectives and scenarios join the meeting chat. We'll also look now at, we'll actually start a conversation that Megan wants to ask people to review a document before the meeting, just to get prepared. So, hi everyone. Please review the attached document. And we'll attach from OneDrive. Choose a document that we've already got prepared. Within private meetings, when you share a document or attachment to a private meeting, it will be shared from your OneDrive, whether you're uploading it or it's already there in OneDrive. And you'll note too the permissions that have been set on the document so that it is shared with everyone who's part of the meeting chat. And we'll send that off. So over at Deborah's experience, Deborah is a member of the operations group, and Deborah can see that there is a chat that has already begun. She goes into her calendar too, and she can see that there's a meeting there that she hasn't accepted yet. So we'll just go through an RSVP as Deborah. And then we'll jump into the chat and have a look at Megan's conversation. So there's the conversation, and before the meeting, it looks like Deborah can read that and she can start to prepare for the meeting. Now, we'll also just jump over to a separate conversation as Deborah, and then go back in as Megan and explicitly mention Deborah. So we can do that because Deborah is within the people that have been invited to the meeting. We can't just mention anyone. They've got to be part of the meeting, so they will be in the chat. And we'll ask Deborah, can you add your comments today? And back over in Deborah, we can see the notification and the @ symbol there. Right, so what we do sometimes see too, and this is one of the things that I'm seeing that's a bit inconsistent around this meeting permissions experience, is that the meeting chat sometimes is muted. You'll see that there's a little mute symbol over the top of the meeting chat, and that means that you're not going to see any notifications, but you could go in and read the content and choose to unmute the conversation. We might see that actually come into play a bit later, but I'm just seeing some inconsistency around how that works at the moment. So, yep, that's sure thing. We can conversate. We can reply as Deborah and talk about things there. Now, Deborah, or rather Megan, realizes that there's someone else or a couple of other people that she wants to invite to the meeting. She should have probably put them on the invite to start with, but she thinks that Isaiah could add some value to this meeting, and also Daryl, who is an external, someone from outside of the org that could add value. So she goes back into her meeting invite and adds Isaiah and Daryl. Okay, and sends the meeting invite off. So what can Isaiah and Daryl see as part of being invited to the meeting? Let's go and see Isaiah to begin with. And we'll jump into the calendar. And yep, so Isaiah's been invited to the meeting. He will respond, accept the invite, and then just chat with participants. And his experience of this is that even though he's from the organization, even though the meeting organizer is the person who has invited him, he can't access the chat before the meeting. He's got to join the meeting before he can start to have a conversation. So I think there's a bit of inconsistency there around that experience. I believe that the organizer, if they have invited someone explicitly and said you're required, and the person is in the meeting from the organization, then they should be able to be part of that chat before the meeting starts. We'll have a look at Daryl's experience too from outside of the organization, and he accepts the invite, chooses to chat with participants, and you will see the same thing. Chat is unavailable for Daryl at this point. The other character that we haven't looked at yet is Nesta. So Nesta is, he has been invited to the meeting. He can see the meeting invite, but remember I said with Nesta we're not going to actually join the meeting. In fact, we're not even going to respond. So you can see from the chat that the chat is fully available to Nesta because he has been added as an optional attendee. And we'll have a look at that later and see what that looks like from a history point of view. So we have a couple of additional attendees. Now let's have a look at a forwarded attendee. Deborah believes that there's someone that she thinks could also add value. Can I invite Patty? And of course Megan's not going to have a problem with that, so Patty's going to forward the invite. We'll go into Patty's email, rather Deborah's email, find the meeting invite and forward that to Patty. And you should attend this. Now, a good thing about this is that as a meeting organizer, Megan's going to also see an email to say that the invite has been forwarded. Here's the meeting forward notification, and that it has been forwarded by Deborah on behalf of Megan to Patty. So let's go over and have a look at Patty's view of this. Patty's been invited to the meeting, and we'll just have a look in her email. Okay, so there is the forwarded invite, which Patty will respond to. And if we have a look in the calendar, might have to refresh this. There's Project Orion. Now, can Patty access the chat before the meeting? We'll go in and chat with participants, and no, that is not the case. She can't access the chat. So what we're seeing is a pattern here that if you have been invited on the original invite when it was first sent out, then if you're a required attendee or you're an optional attendee, you can access the chat before the meeting. If the meeting has been edited, even before the meeting has started, and it has been extended to someone who is inside the organization, outside the organization, or if it's been forwarded by someone, then they don't have access to the chat till they join the meeting. In other words, till the meeting really starts. So just pay attention to that as we start to join the meeting. There's one other thing that Megan wants to do to make the meeting available. We want to see that scenario where we're sharing the meeting link. So we'll go back in as Megan, and we'll find that meeting invite, and we'll copy a link to the meeting invite. And Megan's going to take that meeting invite and share it within a Yammer community. So here's Quickfire Talks, and hi everyone, please feel free to attend this webinar today, and paste the link. Okay, so a link is, you're not inviting people explicitly, you're putting it there so that it's open to anyone who might want to join. And so we're going to see and expect to see that a person who joins this way will have different permissions. So let's go in as Lee, our active community member who's in Quickfire Talks. Lee sees the meeting invite and he gets his times and dates a bit mixed up, and he excitedly clicks on the link and he joins the meeting early. So what does Lee see when he joins the meeting? Well, we'll just mute that as well. Join. Lee can join the meeting because he's joining using a link that has been shared. And when Lee goes into the chat, what does Lee see? Lee doesn't see any history because Lee has joined via a link and he's considered a guest of the meeting. He has temporarily joined the chat. If we have a look at that from Megan's point of view, Megan gets the notification, whoops, someone's gone in early, so that's no good, but we'll just quickly check and see. Oh, I can see that Lee has temporarily joined the chat. So we could just say something like, hi Lee, the meeting hasn't started. Join in a few hours. Go back over to Lee. And Lee can see, of course, that conversation while he is part of the meeting. He'll just give a bit of a thumbs up, cool, and then just exit the meeting. So Lee's joined early, has exited the meeting, and that's fine. Oh, and there's one thing that's changed there too. Because the meeting has stopped, Lee no longer has access to the chat. So you can't type anything in there, and he still sees the history of what's been discussed while he was part of the meeting, but he can't actually participate in any of that genuine pre-meeting chat. So that's Lee. Now let's fast forward to a few hours and when the webinar and the meeting starts, and we'll get that going with Megan, Megan being the meeting organizer. So we'll join the meeting. We'll just turn off all the audio so we don't get any crazy echoes in the demo. And there is Megan waiting for people to join. What does Megan see within the meeting chat? Sees all the pre-meeting chat that she has access to, the discussions with Deborah. Can see the conversation there with Lee saying, it hasn't really started yet. And so the meeting is ready to go. Megan's also going to drop in a quick message to say the meeting will start in 5. I'm just preparing content. Okay, so with Megan starting the meeting, who gets that message? We expect to see Deborah see it because Deborah has full access to the meeting chat. So there you go. She was on the original invite. We do see Nesta gets to see it. Nesta can also see that the meeting has started, but remember, Nesta's not going to join. What does Isaiah see? Isaiah, even though he's from the organisation, even though he has been invited by the meeting organiser ahead of time, he doesn't actually see whether the meeting started or not. And if he goes into chat with participants, even though the meeting has started, he's not going to see anything till he joins. So he's considered a meeting guest. And likewise with Daryl from outside of the organisation. Chat with participants? No. We'll see what Patty sees. Patty is someone within the organisation, has the meeting forwarded, can't see that the meeting has started, and she can't chat with participants either. So let's go in and actually join the meeting from these different perspectives. Here's Deborah, she'll join. Good, good. And hello, Megan. I'm just going to add some text in here, greeting various different people, just to show you that there's text being added to the meeting, but it's not going to be visible until people actually join. So here we have Isaiah. Isaiah was added after the original meeting invite, and we'll join from there. And so Isaiah's in the meeting. Wait for the chat bubble to appear. And Isaiah has not seen any chat before the meeting started, before he's even actually joined the meeting. Hi, Megan and Deborah. Okay. Let's join as Daryl from outside of the organisation. And because Daryl's from outside of the organisation, and there's a policy in that expects him to be within a lobby to wait, then Megan is going to have to let Daryl in via the lobby. And we'll say, hello, Daryl. Right. And because Daryl's now part of the meeting, Megan can mention and include him as part of the conversation. And Daryl will see just that conversation, just that mention, because it's only from the point that he has joined the meeting. We'll join as Patty, and we'll also join as Lee. So you'll see with all of these people that have been invited above and beyond the original invite, they are considered guests of the meeting. They're all considered to temporarily join the chat. And so that's that text that you want to take note of in terms of who has access. Now Lee could have copied this text into an appointment to remind himself of the meeting, but he's just going to join that link via the group as well. And there we go. Lee does see the chat from the time that he joined the meeting early. So there is a bit of history there for him, but only at the point and the range in which he's joined the meeting. You can only see that comment. So getting a really clear picture now. I know it's been a bit repetitive, but it is clear that if you have been on the original invite as a required or optional attendee, you'll have full access to the chat. If you have had the meeting forwarded, you have been added to the meeting invite after the original one has been sent, or you're joining via a link, then you're all considered meeting guests. One other scenario here is that we might be in the meeting and we can think of someone who can bring value to the meeting and just want to see if they're available. And Megan thinks, oh, I should really invite Miriam because she knows a lot about this topic. So we'll go back over to Megan and we'll add or invite Miriam to join the meeting as a participant. Here's Miriam, and we'll request that she joins. Over here, we've got Miriam, who's going to accept the invite to join the call, and she joins. And what does Miriam see in the chat? Yes, we expect to see that Miriam is a guest of the meeting. So there's a lot of different personas here that are joining as meeting guests, and they only see the chat while they're joining the meeting, while they're currently in the meeting. And it's really something to keep in mind if you're trying to have a conversation before and after, and if you're sharing resources as well. Let's also fire up the meeting recording. Now that we've got everyone here that we need to meet, let's start the recording. So we've got Isaiah who's starting the recording, and that means that the recording is going to be saved into his OneDrive. And it should be shared with all the meeting attendees. Well, that's what you would expect. Your recording, great. So we see the banner. We can see the banner from other different people's perspectives, so that's good. While we're in the meeting, we'll go over to Deborah, and Deborah's going to share another document. This is the presentation to review, and she will choose the that equipment replacement cost, so that's fine. So this is sharing a document while the meeting is running and just checking to see who has access to the file as it's been shared. We expect that if the permissions are set to anyone with this link can edit, then that means that anyone who tries to open this from the meeting chat afterwards should be able to access this. So we'll just set that there to have a look at later. Right, fast forward to the meeting. It has concluded. Everyone is about to leave, and we've said our goodbyes. So we'll just do a few things here. We're going to make a few people just leave by just leaving the call, hanging up the call. We'll leave from Daryl's point of view. We've got Isaiah. We'll leave Isaiah on the call. Nesta, remember, hasn't joined the chat or hasn't joined the meeting. So yeah, we've got just a few people on the call still. And Deborah's going to just make a quick comment. Actually, we'll make Isaiah make the comment here. Patty's comments were really helpful. We'll actually mention Patty. So you can see that because Isaiah can mention Patty, she's still part of the meeting, and she can still engage in some of that chat. If we go over and have a look at what Patty sees, Patty can see that comment. Thanks, Isaiah. So the meeting's still running, and it means that they can still engage in some of that conversation. But watch what happens when Megan says, well, thanks everyone for attending, and rather than leave, she's going to choose the end meeting option. And this means that the meeting recording will stop. The various different people who are still in the meeting, it will end for them, and they'll be ejected from the meeting. But what also happens is, if we go back into Megan's experience or view of that, we see the meeting chat text announcing that a few people have left the meeting. They can no longer have access to the chat. Again, take note of this so that you know who can be part of this ongoing conversation after the meeting. So Lee can't access it, and I expect that. Lee's joined via a link, so he wasn't really officially invited. But Paddy and Isaiah and Daryl, they were all added to the meeting invite, and they no longer have access to the chat. So that's part of that confusing thing. And I have seen some inconsistencies here that sometimes people still have access to the chat, and that's why we would check these little announcements. Miriam had been called into the meeting, so she wasn't officially invited on the initial meeting invite, but she was added to the meeting, and so we see that she only has access to the conversations while she was part of the meeting. And that's true of all of these people. They only have access to the conversations while they were part of that meeting. So let's go in and see Isaiah's. Isaiah's experience: can't send any messages, no longer a member of the chat. Can see the various different chat that occurred while the meeting was running. So he can go in and take a look at Deborah's shared document and open that up, and there we go. So that's fine, can see that. And can see and try and recall, oh, that's right, that's what was discussed during the meeting. Maybe there were some links and various different resources that were shared there. We'll have a look at Daryl, and there we go. There's the meeting for him. So Daryl is the external attendee. He came from another organisation. We still see that the meeting recording is being saved to OneDrive. So we do want to go back and have a look and see who has access to that meeting recording as well. Oh, there it is. Can Megan access the meeting recording? We'd expect so. She's the meeting organizer. Meeting recording. So that recording has been saved into Isaiah's OneDrive, and let's just see as we validate who we are. Can we access the meeting? Here's the meeting recording. There it is. So Megan can access the recording. Who else can access the recording? Can Deborah access the recording? Deborah has to also validate who she is and send that off. Yep, so we have Megan, the organizer, Deborah, who was invited as a required attendee as part of the operations group. Let's now go in and see what Nesta can see. Nesta didn't join the meeting. He was added as optional. He can go into the conversation thread and see all the history, even though he didn't join the meeting. And he can also open up the meeting recording. He can also continue. Sorry, I missed this, everyone. I'll catch the recording. Right. So that's our optional attendee he has full access to the meeting recording and all the meeting chat. He can fully participate before, during, and after, even though he didn't actually join in. Isaiah from the organisation, well, we know that Isaiah can't continue the chat. The chat has finished for him, but I'll just refresh this and see, is the meeting recording accessible to Isaiah? Now, I do find this kind of funny because Isaiah was the person who started the recording. And maybe I made this a little confusing by getting him to start the recording. Remember, Isaiah was one of our meeting guests or attendees, and it seems that he can't even see the recording that he made. There's another way to check that out. We'll just go into his OneDrive and just confirm that that he can access it. So it'll be in recordings, and 6 minutes ago, here's Project Orion. So a bit flaky there that he can't see it within the meeting chat, but it actually kind of confirms that while he was an attendee for a period of time in that meeting and he can access the documents and he can see the conversation that happened while he was part of the meeting. After leaving the meeting as a guest, he doesn't have access to the recording. Let's have a look at that from Patty's perspective. Patty's from within the organisation. She had the meeting invite forwarded to her. So we'll just switch between here and here and see a look. Can she access the meeting recording? She can't see it within the meeting chat. Did Patty, let's just have a quick look under the covers. Has Patty been given access to it from her OneDrive? When something's shared from a person's OneDrive to another person within the organisation, you can use this menu here called Shared, and it will show what you have shared with people and what people have shared with you. And so here's a quick way to access meeting recordings that have been shared with you from someone's OneDrive. It looks like it has been shared and that Patty can access the recording. Though, yeah, it's a little flaky, guys. I expect that because she was part of the meeting, we should see the fully be able to see that the meeting recording can be opened and triggered from the meeting chat. But certainly not seeing that at this stage. We'll have a look from Daryl's point of view, from outside of the organisation. Daryl will just get that to refresh there. And when someone is outside of the organisation, let's see, can they see the recording? Well, it's not there as part of the meeting chat. Can we go in from outside? Let's have a look. Do we see something in the shared view of things? Shared with you? No. And this is actually a behaviour by design too, that when someone from outside of your organisation attends a meeting and they have and the meeting has been recorded, that an external attendee won't automatically have the meeting recording shared with them. That's certainly been my observation and experience. So if we want to share that with our external attendees, then Isaiah needs to go in and share that explicitly with Daryl. So only people that you specify, let's go in and share that with Daryl.Webster and share that so that it is available to him to view. Patty, Lee, does Lee see the recording? Doesn't see it there. Lee can access a shared document. Cool. Can Lee see the meeting recording? Open up the OneDrive. See what has been shared. There's the meeting recording has been shared. So even though joining via a link, Lee didn't have to do anything special to, well, he had to navigate his way to find the meeting recording. Again, I really think that if someone has joined the meeting, we should see the meeting recording there as a thumbnail, and that it would be able to be clicked and triggered to open that up. We do see something interesting here, though, that I did mention earlier, which is meeting chat has been muted. And yeah, this is where there's a little bit of flakiness and inconsistency. Lee's not going to be able to join this chat or continue with after meeting conversations because he no longer has access to the chat, much like some of the other meeting guests. But this gives the impression that he can unmute the chat and still be part of that meeting. So not too cool. Miriam, let's just lastly check in with Miriam. Miriam can access the document that was shared. She can see the content that was shared as well, the conversation that was shared. Yep. And I expect that Miriam, because she is a member of the organisation, that when we go to her OneDrive, we'll also see the meeting recording. Yes, shared there with her. Okay. So there's a number of different things here that we have to keep in mind as meeting organisers. If we're wanting people to still be part of this conversation, what do we want them to be part of? Do we want everyone to be part of that conversation before the meeting starts? When they're in the meeting, of course, if people join, we'd like them to see the chat, unless it is a webinar and we've turned that sort of thing off. And who do we want to be able to access the chat after the meeting? There are different scenarios where we want people to only see content while they have been participating. But I would say that if we have invited people and we've required them, or they're optional, then they should see the full meeting history, the chat and anything that has been shared within the meeting and the recording. If someone has been added to the meeting invite after it has been sent, so that was Isaiah and Daryl. Well, Isaiah's part of the he's part of the organisation. So we expect Isaiah to be able to see the full meeting chat as well and everything in there. But that's not the case. He has to join the meeting to see that. Daryl, who's a guest, do we want Daryl to be able to see the full meeting experience? Well, as a meeting organiser, if I've invited a guest and I want them to be able to be part of this conversation, then I do want Daryl to be able to see the meeting chat before, during and after, because he's been part of the meeting, and perhaps this is a project meeting and we're wanting to use this to coordinate various tasks and activities. So a bit of inconsistency there. For others that have been added, like Patty, the meeting invite has been forwarded. So it's been done on behalf of Megan. Deborah forwarded the meeting invite to Patty, and we see Megan has full visibility of that. Should Patty be able to see the full conversation history before, during and after? And perhaps that's something that needs a bit of work too. That with Patty, maybe the intention is yes, that's fine. Deborah has forwarded it on behalf of Megan. Is there maybe a way that we can, as Megan, the organiser, can approve and say, yes, this Patty can be a full attendee, a full participant in the meeting chat? For Nesta was a optional attendee, and really it's performing as we expect for him. He didn't join in any of the meeting activities, chat and various things, but he can access everything after the fact and catch up with it. Miriam, who was called into the meeting, she can only access what she can see for the period of time that she joined. And I think that it is accurate to be her experience, that if she has just been invited as part of this meeting just for that segment, then yeah, that makes sense. That from a permissions perspective, she's just part of that meeting. Maybe there were things that were discussed before she joined that she really shouldn't be part of, and she didn't need to have access to that. And that may be something to consider too when you're recording meetings. The meeting recording started before Miriam had joined. And was there something in the meeting recording that Miriam probably shouldn't have heard? So we're seeing maybe that this is the experience she should see. She shouldn't be able to have access to the meeting recording. But, of course, it has been shared with her in the background. Lastly, we have Lee, who joined via a link, and because the link is just sent widely, or it's been made available widely, then he should be treated as a meeting guest as well, just as someone who can just join, see the chat, see the different resources as part of that. So a lot of big lessons there. If you really want people to be part of a meeting and be part of that full conversation, make sure that you add them to the meeting invite initially. I have seen other behaviour where sometimes when the meeting organiser adds people after the fact, that they do have access to the chat. And that's how I would expect it to happen. If we've added someone afterwards and required them to be part of it, then they should be included as part of that full chat experience. So that's a bit of a doozy, bit of a large demo about what's going on there with chat and access to it. Like I said, I'm still seeing inconsistencies, and I am hearing that across the community. So I don't know what I can do to sort of iron out that confusion, but hopefully we'll see Microsoft tidy things up a bit here. If you like to see more of this kind of content with Modern Workplace and me trying to make sense of it for you and with you, and also preparing you for some of these changes, then do subscribe to the channel and do hang in there as I continue to put out content from the Modern Workplace change. We'll see you again soon. Bye for now.